Creativity for me is, I guess, my hallmark now. I just need a lot of courage to see it through to the very end.
Hello and welcome to One on One. I'm Michaela Foster. We have with us Michaela Foster Marsh, an Ottawa singer-songwriter who won't go unnoticed for very much longer. Michaela has won songwriters competitions and has recently teamed up with Greg Kavanaugh, a Juno Award-winning producer, to release her debut album called Fairy Tales and the Death of Innocence. Michaela emigrated from Scotland in 1990 to marry and be with her husband Jerry. Although she began writing songs when she was 14, it wasn't until she experienced the loss of her home and her country, and then the loss of her brother Frankie, that she decided to take up music seriously. Taped at Days of Hope, we listen to Fallen Angel by Michaela Foster Marsh.
Let the healing enfold you and all the wrong places you've looked for desire. You're so hungry for freedom, and so you choose to control, and you've torn at boundaries with those whom you've loved, until there's nowhere left to turn. So you keep running from yourself. And time will come when you're freed in your storm. Oh, then you will discover what you came here for, and your love affair with darkness will draw to a close, and you'll find in your heart then the greater love unknown. My fallen angel.
Michaela, welcome to One on One. Thanks so much for being with us.
You're very welcome.
When I hear you sing Fallen Angel, I can't help but envision you singing this song at the Grammys one day. Is that in the
Yeah.
plans?
Well, I just have to talk to them about bringing that big church organ there, you know. It might be a bit difficult. But
The organ that you used, that you went back to Scotland
Yeah,
to use for
yeah,
that recording.
Yeah.
Michaela, you don't read music, and you've been quoted as saying that you don't know anything about music. How can that be when you compose such beautiful pieces?
I guess it just comes from somewhere else. It's just like finding another part of yourself and being able to sort of unblock that area and allowing the creativity to take over, because I can't describe it any other way. There is no formula to it as to how it comes about. It just comes from that other part of yourself. Yeah.
Is it true that you would play the piano and sing here at home, and your husband Jerry would say, "Michaela, you really must do something about this talent"?
Yeah, he would tell people that he used to have to wait outside the door, because if I knew he was there, I would just instantly stop playing. I was very, very self-conscious about it, and was not very confident, and believing that my music could actually be out there and have people listen to it and take it seriously. And so yeah, it's taken me a long time. Yeah.
You actually started writing when you were 14. You were writing lyrics and music, and
Yeah, I don't know. I just obviously wasn't, I think, emotionally ready. You know, I sometimes think like it would have been like the flower that comes up too soon and the frost bites it. I think I was too vulnerable. I would have just my vulnerabilities would have got the better of me, and I probably would never have come to fruition. I would just have withered away, because you do have to be tremendously tough in the business in order to survive, and I don't think those things were fully developed in me. I think it's a balance. You have to be tough but still have the tender heart. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You wrote a song for your brother Frankie when he passed away, and you booked time at a local studio here. How did that come about?
Well, after Frankie died, I had written a song for the family and really wanted them to hear it, and I tried to do a home recording and it just wasn't working, and I had some songs there, and when you're in a state of grief, everything is much more raw, and there's a lot of raw emotional energy, and I had been thinking about my music seriously all over that period of time, and there was a lot of writing that was happening. So I went into the studio very tentatively just to do the recording for home, and when I got back from the studio a week later, the phone rang, and the studio were encouraging me to write some more and saying, why are you not taking this seriously? They knew that I really was not in the business to any extent. And so I went and spoke to them, and they suggested that I, really start to take it seriously. And all I needed was that sort of confidence, mm-hmm. and then I took the ball and ran and decided that this was really what I'd always wanted to do. It was always undulating under the surface. It was always there. It would come in waves, and it was always from a child what I wanted to do. I just didn't have the confidence.
And then you wrote a song and entered the Magic 100 songwriting contest, and then
won. Yeah, and I was just blown away by that. It was that again, just reinforced it for me. It came at the best time for me, because then I had been seriously looking for a producer, and wanted to do the CD, and was finding it difficult to find somebody, and it propelled me down to Toronto, and that's when I got a chance to meet with some people down there.
And how did you get teamed up with Greg Kavanagh? He's a Juno award-winning producer. What made it that you finally, when you met Greg, you knew that you wanted to, you trusted him enough to work with you?
He had a beer. We met in a bar, and the joke is that he's the old rocker. Somebody said to me, just look for the old rocker and you'll find Greg, and I instantly found him. And I just a sense of humour, and it took me a while. It does take me a while to trust people, and I just felt instantly once we started working together on the project that he was the first producer that I felt really got it. He got the sort of darker quality, where I wanted to go with it. I've always been fascinated by the conflicting aspects of life, the paradoxes and tensions, and the transformation from the dark passages and the resilience of the human spirit. And I think Greg somehow is in that headspace as well, and so he was able to sort of just pick up on that, and I think that's partly why it worked so well. It's both a place that we like to go, I think.
And is that basically what Fairy Tales and the Death of Innocence is about? It's about the darker side, because you continually go back to the darker side and very melancholic lyrics,
yeah.
And then all of a sudden the inspiring lighter side comes up.
Yeah, it's definitely weaved throughout, and the spirituality is weaved throughout, and the whole business of the dark passages and getting through them is certainly relevant to the album. Yeah.
You wrote a song about the 16 children who were killed, mm-hmm. and the teacher who were shot dead in the classroom.
Yeah.
What did this song mean to you personally?
Well, that morning, it starts off with me in bed and the alarm clock ringing, and the song was written very quickly, and it just again came from that place. That was instantly how I felt, was, thank God the angels can fly. It was the distance. I was 3,000 miles away from home, and also having heard the news of Frankie's death 3,000 miles away, that all came rushing back to me, and I had a level of empathy with the parents and the families that I could not have had before that, and I felt I sort of swept back into a state of grief from it. I was devastated by it, as I think many people were. It was such a tragedy, and so many young children and their teacher there to lose their life.
And then you had another death to deal with, the death of your father, as you were recording
Yes.
Fairy Tales in Toronto. You were called and had to go back to Scotland as your father became more and more ill.
Yeah, yeah. I was, a lot of people feel it's very sad that he was not able to be around for the release of the CD or for the finished product. And it is very sad, and you know, you never quite understand in this earthly plane anyway why these things happen the way they do. But certainly having had the CD to work on over the time of his death and then after his death made it easier for me to get on that plane and leave Glasgow after the funeral, because I had something to come back to work towards that he was very proud of and was very much a part of. And indeed there are 2 songs there that he wrote the lyrics to, which I managed to get the opportunity to weave my craft with my father's and put music to it. So it's certainly for me, it was a blessing that I had the CD to focus on. And again, there was raw emotional energy there that was used to the benefit of the CD, I think.
And you had a copy of the tape. You wanted your father to hear the song, and you just had a copy with you when you went home, and he did have a chance to listen to the songs, to his songs.
Yeah, somebody asked me recently if I believe in miracles, and I think that whole incident for me, it just speaks volumes. That we were in Toronto and we had got word that my dad was not very well, but we had no idea how close he was to death. And I was very anxious to get the songs that we were working on finished and produced and up and ready to send to him. And that day the telephone rang, and Greg had to get called in on another job with EMI, somebody more important, more famous than I. So he went off to do that, and before, he was very sensitive to it, and he said, look, we will get this finished, we'll do it today, and we'll just do a rough board mix, and then you can send it home to your family. So we did the rough mix, and just as I was leaving his house, he said to me, are you going to mail that? And I said, yes. And he said, well, don't mail it. Please just test it, because sometimes my tape machine doesn't work very well. And then I got home, put it in my pocket, and the story is there was the snowstorm, and I came back to Ottawa on the bus and still had the tape in my pocket because I hadn't managed to mail it because of the snowstorm. And when I got home, I heard that I had to go home to Scotland, get on the plane and go back. And when I arrived in Scotland, I still had the tape in my pocket. And if I had put it in the mailbox, he would never have heard it. But the fact that I still had it in my pocket meant that he was able to hear it. Yeah, so things like that just reconfirm my belief in somebody else being around. Yeah.
You left Glasgow in 1990, and you met the man that you wanted to marry, and you left your home, you left your country to marry an Ottawa firefighter.
Yes.
So tell us how that all happened.
I met Jerry through it was the next door neighbour of a friend I was staying with. It was an old friend of my mother's, and she had immigrated to Canada about 20 years previous, and really wanted me to come out on a holiday, and I did, and met Jerry through her neighbour. Yeah, so that, you know, we started to sort of see one another, but we were just more friends than anything. And then he came over to Scotland to visit. Came over for 5 weeks and asked me to get married after about a week or so. And
after about a week or so?
Yeah. So we were more than friends by that stage. It was more of a relationship developing. And then I came over here. I wasn't sure that I could leave home. It's a whole other experience. You know, the immigration process is quite difficult. So it was hard. Yeah.
If you would have stayed in Scotland, your claim to fame to that point had been you were the top student in Glasgow for dress design.
For fashion,
would you have for fashion design?
Yeah.
Would you have pursued that avenue? Do you think your music career ever would have happened if you would have stayed in Scotland?
I think there's certain things. There was a transformation in me after I left home, and I think there was other areas of myself that were exposed that I wouldn't have been able to tap into had I been at home. And there was a tremendous growth period in myself. Those things would not have flourished, I don't think, there. And so to that extent, you know, it's hard to say. I think that the writing would still have continued. I think ultimately I would have ended up doing what I'm doing now, but there's a richness of, a wealth of insights into things that I've had by being away from home, which I can't imagine not having had now. Yeah. The umbilical cord needed severed, and it took many years, and even with the immigration process it was still very much there. And you know, you just slowly get rid of it, because it does tie you back a bit. I'm more free to express myself as a complete individual now. Yeah.
Your CD has been released independently, and although you have been approached by recording companies here in Canada, you have made the decision to stay independent. Why is that?
There's more freedom for the artist, and I think in the early stages of your career, while you're still developing and developing an idea as to where you want to be, it's a good thing to be independent. Yeah, it allows me a lot more freedom of expression as an artist. Yeah, that's not to say if a record company didn't come along that had a good vision of where we wanted to go, and then for sure we would look seriously at it. Yeah.
Your CD release party was held recently at Barrymore's. What kind of an experience was that for you?
Oh, it was overwhelming. It's one of the highlights, I think, so far of my life. You know, that was the start of the journey, and now I had it completed. I had this tangible thing called a CD, and you know, it was a lot of work. There was a lot of people involved. I had no idea the amount of people that it took to really move something like this and get it underway, and I'm still amazed at how much work is involved. It's a lengthy process, but it's an enjoyable one. Yeah, it's a definite journey, and so it was a delight for me. There was so many people there and so many friends, and I had my mother there from Scotland, so it was lovely.
Is it more difficult for you to perform in front of friends and family and such than to perform in front of strangers?
I think
so.
Yeah.
Are they harsher critics?
I think so. You get the real comments. I mean, they're very honest. They'll tell you exactly what they think about it. But it was a good night. We were able to, you know, I was able to ridicule some people from the stage. I had the mic, so I had fun with it. So it was good. But you're always, I think it is more difficult when it's people you know, for sure. Yeah, you're always more sensitive to certain
And
things.
since you've opened for Gino Vanelli at Barrymore's as well, and you've had a number of shows over the summer and throughout the year, you will continue to perform here in Ottawa, or what is next?
Yeah, I'd like to start to tour out with Ottawa and just pick up more of an audience. It's become clear to me that every time you play, you do pick up new fans, and so it's important to do as much gigging as I can, and hopefully just get the name out there and get people coming to the shows more and more.
What kind of strategy or what kind of plan do you have for actually breaking out of the industry? It seems that now you have the CD. You've had a number of gigs here locally as well in Toronto. What's the plan in terms of breaking it and making it? You're obviously a very, very talented individual and highly respected by those who have worked with you to date. What's your plan?
Oh, I think to play as much as possible, and we have distribution with Page, so it is available in all the record stores across Canada. If it's not in the store, then people can certainly order it. And I have a publicist working for me, Jane Harbury Publicity in Toronto. And so they're always, the media is a great force. If we can get more media on our side, that always helps. And you know, the opening for people, opening for Kurt Smith on the 17th. So as many gigs like that as I can get is great.
And what is your ultimate goal with your recording career?
Oh, I can't imagine being without it. Creativity for me is, I guess, my hallmark now. I just need a lot of courage to see it through to the very end. Because, you know, you do take a lot of knocks in the business. But certainly the creative process for me, I couldn't live without it, so I can't imagine not continuing.
Are you writing again now that you have the first your debut CD? You're writing again?
Yeah, I am.
And the
Yeah.
songs were quite dramatic, and we talked about the dark side and the light side.
Yeah.
Is the music similar, or?
I think, I'm afraid to say that I think I'll always sort of go there. Maybe some of the music might sound a bit more uplifting, but I think I'm certainly drawn to human frailty for subject matter. Yeah, that side of life, it seems to appeal to me for now anyway. That's not to say that I don't write upbeat songs, I do, but I tend to be happier listening to the darker stuff.
Time Bomb is quite an upbeat tune. Where
Yeah.
did that originate from?
Quite a paradox. Oh, I am not going to say. I can't tell you. I'd never be forgiven. It's hard for me. I think when you tell people where it really starts, then it closes it for the listener. There's so much more. I'm always amazed at what people will pick up and what they actually interpret. It has to resonate somehow with the listener, and it's amazing what the feedback that I get. And it's almost like the song has its own life, and so it should. You know, you write it, you give birth to it, and then it has to go out and be itself and find its audience. So I'm always reluctant to let people know what the actual lyrics are about.
You've said that your songs are born at the piano. What do you actually start with? The melody? Do you start with the lyrics? How do you put the two together, especially given that you don't write music? How do you put it all together?
Chaos. It's absolute chaos. But I think creativity is a bit like that. You know, you just have this mass of sort of ideas or something, and then, like I say, it starts to shape itself. It almost starts to tell you where it wants to go. But I think for me, it's usually the lyrics that come first. It's something that's maybe happened or an incident has occurred, and I will write it down in a chaotic way, and then slowly start to structure it, take it to the piano, and start working on it there, and start building it into a song, giving it shape and form.
Can you give us an insight into some of the music that you're working on now?
That's a secret.
I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's a secret.
You've been forced to learn the business side of the industry as well. Has that been eye-opening for you, or is that something that many artists don't want to be part of that?
Yeah.
Is that something for you that you want to shy away from, or that you want to get into as well?
There's a part of me that would like nothing more than to run away from it, because it doesn't appeal to me. I don't like dealing with some of the people that I have to deal with. So yeah, there's a tendency to want to run away from it, but the other part of me won't run away from it. And when I do feel like running away from it, that's a warning sign for me that I must deal with it. It's very easy to let somebody else handle it, and I'd like to be as much on top of it as possible. There's a saying that I love: be as wise as serpents and harmless as doves, and I think in this business you have to be like that. Yeah, I'm certainly learning, and you learn on your feet as you go along. There's so much to learn. It's not just about the songwriting, but the whole business aspect of it. Yeah.
And you're working at that on your own. Is there any advisors? You're working with your producer, Greg, of course.
Yeah, well, my producer certainly is a great help, and it's good to have his ears and his feedback. He's been in the business a long time, and he is somebody that I do trust now. So, yeah, he gets a lot of it. He gets the brunt of it.
Have you done any music videos yet? Is that the next step for you?
That's the next thing, yeah. We're just applying for some grants, some funding now, and hoping to go on and do a video, yeah.
Well, Michaela, thank you so much. We've very much enjoyed speaking with you, and certainly wish you the absolute best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us, Michaela.
Thanks.
I've just spoken with Michaela Foster Marsh, Ottawa's very talented singer-songwriter. With the help of Greg Kavanaugh, she has just recently released her debut album called Fairy Tales and the Death of Innocence. Although an independent release, many believe that it won't stay independent for very long. We leave you now with Michaela Foster Marsh and Time Bomb. I'm Michaela Foster, and this has been One on One. You can see Michaela Foster Marsh at Barrymore's on November 17th when she opens for Kurt Smith, formerly of Tears for Fears.
I don't need little things, but I don't like chocolates. shoebox. I'm like a time bomb ticking. I have wicked little thoughts. Time bombs ticking and I'm all tied up in knots. Don't think me unstable. I lived in a house without a clock. And I don't read psychology books. And I don't need you to tell me about me. I know myself better. And I think I like myself more. You want an unconscious puppet you can chase around the bed. Well, I just can't listen to your quiet little thoughts. I understand better the noise of a ticking bomb. So if you'll escape me just a little, I'll react a little more. If you scare me with your threats that you won't see me again, you know I'll feel a lot better. Well, at least the behavior I will know. And if you tear my heart to pieces, then you stab me to the floor. I'll love you more. Oh yeah, I'll just get back evidence for more. No, I don't read psychology books. And I don't need you to tell me about me. I know myself better. And I think I like myself more. I'm like a time bomb ticking. I have wicked little thoughts. Time bombs ticking and I'm all tied up in knots. Don't think me unstable. I can't stop bombs from going.